But I'll kind of go through what I look as a coach. And so I don't know if you can see my cursor. Is it popping up? Yeah. I mean, this is always good to know. I mean, we're typically ranked in the top 5 in the country. For us, it's the growth, right? So we're getting better and better from a ranking standpoint. What I want to see is growth throughout the year. And we've got, 2 returning players. And so it's good to see these young guys kind of grow. The first thing you get is your season summary. And so, and I'm sure everybody that's watching this knows how to kind of go in and filter, but we usually typically filter it by division on a national level. In tournaments, and then it's going to be interesting since this is the first year to see the trend data over the years, right? So that's last year's, so you can see where we were, throughout the year. We ended up in the Final Four last year, and so I'm able to go back and compare, a Colby here who was 71 last year. Here we are. I was trying to kind of see where what made him a little bit better as a sophomore last year, and this year he's still playing good, but we would like to know, where those spots are. But yeah, we would go through here. Their first round average, second round average, third round average. I'm always trying to find the story behind the data, right? So like what makes Hunter Smith so much better as the tournament goes on, if you look. I mean, he goes from 73 typically in round 1 to about 71 in round 3. And I may ask, we may start digging into that. Like, what do you feel makes you better? How can we make the first round better? How can we parlay what you've learned as a returning national champion individually? How can we translate some of that into these other guys? So yeah, season summary is really good for us. I can, obviously sort by scoring average and doing all those things. And that's important for me to show the guys like, okay, this is what really good is, and this is where we need to get better. And then scoring breakdowns, the second screen. This actually helped me pick a lineup. I typically don't pick lineups, but I was in a situation where we didn't have a big turnaround and I had a guy struggling, and I knew kind of where we were going as far as course length. And so I was able to choose a guy. I went in here and kind of looked at score to par versus course length and who played better. We were going to a longer golf course, and I needed to see typically who would play a longer course better. So I was able to kind of use that it wasn't my sole decision making. A lot of that's based on feel and gut, but like that was able to kind of indicate what I was trying to, or at least back up what I was trying to do as a coach and get the right lineup in there. So whole groups, this is good. I actually shared this with our strength and conditioning people, like the first 9, the second 9, the first 6, like where are we falling off? Are we in shape? Or most of these guys tend to do pretty well. It just kind of backs up who might need some more stamina work. It may be a mental issue. It may be a follow-up. Like that's where that conversation with that young man goes is, like, see if you can help figure this out. And even before our meetings, I will start bringing those questions up to them for them to start thinking about that. Maybe I'm worried about holding on to a lead, or I know some of my guys are learning how to compete, and play, we call it in the fire. Like they're not used to being in the lineup as much. They're good players. They're just not in the. It's one thing to play as an individual. It's another to get in there when you're in the top 5 and North Georgia's next to your name, and there's a lot of high expectations. So we're really dig down into where we need to improve. Is it mental? Is it strategy? Is it both? Is it mindset? Whatever. And counting scores are big for us. I like guys that can get in and contribute. We struggled at a couple events in the year, and then you'll see our last tournament, for instance, we were at Fripp Island, did not play very well in the first round. Kind of talked to him on the golf course because it was a 36-hole day, but kind of talking to him, we kind of trained some strategy on the run on some holes because it was a new golf course for us. And then went in that Monday night, and really changed some strategy and some mindset approaches, and came back and really improved in the third round. I will tell you, just from my research, and I've got a good friend that does a lot of research for us, at the University of Georgia. And one of our big areas, and I don't mind sharing this, is our par 3 scoring average. I think that's one of the separators in college golf is your ability to, try to be as close to 3.0 as you can. I've got that pretty much researched out to be true. And I know when we won or been at the top of the leaderboard, everybody talks about bogey avoidance, but par 3 scoring average is pretty big too. And that typically is an indicator that you played pretty well. Par 3 scoring, we're not doing as well as we normally do. And so we've got to go back and look at that in the offseason. Where are you addressing that with our guys? Let's start thinking about par 3s. Is it a targeting issue? Is it we're finding out with some of them it's a targeting issue, with some of them it's a distance control issue. And so we're able to start developing offseason plans to attack that. We may go and take TrackMan and set it up from some of these distances, and we just really drill those distances and really try to figure out, and is it a technique issue? I can't do that very well. So then we'll get with their teacher, their instructor, and try to pinpoint that part. So we're really trying to really drill down in the root cause of why they're struggling and go from there. Same thing on par fours and par fives. It may dictate how we work. We may be going for par fives and two, but we're leaving them in bad spots, so it's hard to get up and down for a four. So that's important to us as well. Drop scores, but drop scores are huge. I need to know that five guy is doing really well, and we struggled with that a little bit this year. A lot of that's because we are inexperienced to start the year. We're getting experience now, so this is not an excuse anymore. We got to figure out why these drop scores are a little higher than they typically have been in the past. And again, that's individual with each kid, and so we would go through here and start picking apart why these are a little higher than normal. A lot of that is just experience and targeting and strategy and those types of things. Some of it's mental for certain kids. Frustration and those types of things. Rounds played. It'll be nice to kind of start when I pick my postseason team and we kind of get into that. Who's played the most rounds? Who's played the best? We can go into some of these other buckets. Something that I absolutely love are these situational performance areas. Momentum has been one that I absolutely have just really gotten into. Let me explain this really quickly if people don't know. Bounce back, and if you hover over, it'll tell you bounce backs. If you make a par better on the hole after making a bogey or worse. Drop off is where you follow a birdie or better with a bogey or worse. Post birdie screw up kind of deal. Gas pedals when you follow up a birdie with a birdie or better, and then your bogey trains where you follow up obviously a bogey with another bogey or worse. This kind of helps me with the mental side. I can see this in real time with my guys, especially. Let's say it's a new kid in the lineup, and so I'm able to come in here and see. Like I know I have one guy that gets pretty frustrated when he makes a bogey. I'd like to see what his bounce back number is, and really start talking to him. And stats are really good, but they're only as good as the story, like I said earlier. And then one thing I love about stats is guys tend to want to argue. I'm really close to my guys, but guys want to argue. I love the black and white. Like, no, here's the empirical truth. You make a bogey, whatever, 36% of the time after you made one already. Like everybody in our division only does it 29% of the time or whatever in Division 2. So let's go in here and, let's talk about our process, our mindset going in, our processes around the ball, our strategy. I'm able to come in here and show them, not from a gotcha standpoint, but from a really objective standpoint. Like, look, you're making bogey at a higher clip after another bogey than everybody else. And then, then I'm able to go to him, like for instance, with Jack here, I'm able to go to him and say, your bounce back is 63%. That's pretty good. That's close to division average. You're 7 down. Like, let's get that even better. You'll have more chances to bounce back if you're not, changing your strategy from an emotional standpoint. Not that he does, but it's just, and you can kind of see, we talk about grit. I almost feel like, again, it's data. It's not, there's a story behind it. You go to Copperhead down in Innisbrook, where it hosts the Valspar, we played there. Like, you're probably not going to get a lot of bounce back down there because it's a hard golf course, but you can kind of see some trends, and you can kind of see who's got some grit and who kind of fights it out when they don't have it, those kinds of things. And so I've really been impressed with this screen here. And Contention is fun. I've kind of brought a kid in and shown them, like, in the top 5, here's how many times you've been inside the top 5, how many rounds, and then like how many times you're beating the field average and those types of things. Consecutive rounds, like how many times in a row can you beat the field average? I really like top 15s. For my research, if everybody's in the top 25 or better, you typically have a chance to win the event. And so top 15 is even better. Like, how many times can you put yourself in the top 15 in the field? And the kids are kind of surprised with how many times they played in the top 15. They didn't realize, like, they may not realize it during the tournament. I'm like, look, yeah, you were inside the top 15 7 times. Or Colby, you were in there 6 times, like, or 6 rounds out of the 15. Like, let's increase that a little bit, or let's kind of keep an eye on that kind of things. Comeback rounds is kind of like the momentum. It's where you've followed up a good round with a better one, or whatever, and how much you've improved. You have a percentage and the number of rounds played, your average on the comeback, and then your improvement kind of shows you who can come back from a bad day. We all know that happens in golf, especially in college golf, and it's kind of good to see. I can see grit again. Here, the division average in Division 2 is 44%, and I've got a lot of guys that are percentage wise above that, and so we're pretty gritty as a team. And if they're not, let's figure out why. Performance by round. Again, I kind of look at this for stamina from a mental standpoint. We have, and this is something I've kind of struggled with even at North Georgia, as successful as we've been, is we tend to not start very well. So we've kind of got into that. And then we also like, what is our mindset going in? Like, are we changing our strategy on the golf course? Again, it could be different for each kid, but let's really kind of start peeling away that onion and figuring out where that root cause is. We tend to have, most events have played well or better in the last round, with some exceptions. And so I'd like to know why that is and kind of dig down. Again, these are things that I didn't know I wanted to know, or I didn't know how to find out, or I had to do a lot of Excel spreadsheets, and I didn't really want to do that. This is, I'm letting Clip do it for me. So it's great. Consistency. Everybody talks about consistency. I tell kids, you're consistent. You're always consistent. It's just, how consistent are you, and are you consistent at what you want to be consistent at? Does that make sense? Like, we talk a lot about our bell-shaped curve for our players. Like, what is your floor? What is your ceiling? Where is your average fall? And so that's exactly what this is. We have our deviation. We have our range. I tell them most of the time you're going to be playing, from a bell-shaped curve standpoint. They're always making fun of me, like, Coach, bell-shaped curve. Every time I draw it on the board, they're like, okay, here we go. But like the top, 10% of the time, or 5% of the time, you're going to have your A game, and you're going to have your D or F game about 5% of the time. The rest of the time, the 90% of the time, is the B and C, or 80%, whatever you want to say. But like the middle chunk, the bell, the big part of the bell is what you're going to have with most of the time. That's your B and C game. And so this actually quantifies that bell-shaped curve for me. How good is your bad? And that, I talk about that a lot. Like, how good is your bad? And from a tournament standpoint, like, can you grind out? Can you bring up your floor? It's really hard for a good player to improve that 1 or 2 or 3 strokes. Where you can see the most to move your average is the bottom half. And I'm kind of seeing that with some of my guys. We play in Division II until the end of the year. Typically, we're going to play 36 hole days. It's been good for us. Most of our guys, again, I've shared this with our strength conditioning people. I think that's where it shows. I've been pretty pleased with this for the most part in the second half of the 36 hole day, as far as improvement. Like here, typically Hunter's almost a half a stroke better. Kyle Marco here is 2 strokes better in the second round of a 36 hole days. It's getting better. Weather conditions, I'm looking forward. In the spring, we're going to get some bad weather. Always do. We'll go in February. We'll be in Jacksonville, Florida, which sounds great. But there will definitely be some weather down there. Wind, I think wind is a big separator, right? I think everybody can agree with that. Wind, green speeds, rough, I think, are the separators. And here I can see we've played in some pretty windy conditions. I can sort by who's doing better, right? Something also like the historic course. Yeah, I can go in here and pull up historical data on, like, we're going to St. John's Country Club in the fall. Like, this is where we played last year. I can kind of see where these holes are from a targeting standpoint, where we can improve. I can go in here and just really tell who plays what courses well, which could, I guess, typically, really could give me some ideas on, like, if I'm picking a lineup. I typically qualify for everything, but if I needed to pick a lineup, I've got some data there to kind of back that up. These are your comparisons. Like, I can see where we are as far as scoring average. I can scroll down, and all this is really based on, scoring average is relative, right? We've played some pretty hard golf courses. We're down here somewhere, I don't know, we're like 60th or something. All right, so here we are. Like, I can pull that up, and I know that we are losing strokes on par 3s, and definitely, like, there's going to be some teams from a par 5 average standpoint. Central Oklahoma, who I know Derek and his guys really well, they're older, they're long. They're beating us by a good chunk here. But this is where I can pull this up, and I will do this in front of the guys in a team meeting and say, okay, here's where we're losing. Like, it's quantifiable. Like, once you show them the proof, they're like, okay, coach, yeah, you're right. Okay, let's get better at that. So I'm always trying to find the why. I was that way as a player. I want to know the why. Like, why are we doing this? And so it's easier for me to quantify the why here. The information's ready immediately. And so now I'm able to go in here and start attacking the problem instead of figuring out what the problem is, right? I can kind of already see the problem. I can guarantee that it will give us a more focused approach to how we go into this off season and into the spring season. It's basically doing my data for us. Even the players don't even have to enter this data. The coaches don't have to enter this data. It's already in there. As soon as the tournament's over, it pops in there. Now I can click on a tab. It saves me probably an hour of figuring out whose scores are counting and who's helping us do what we do. So, it's pretty great.